If ever there was a game that illustrated just how subjective value is when talking about our experiences with the medium of games, Genshin Impact would be that game. A lot of people are leveling heavy praise at Genshin, in no small part because it's effectively a full single-player action RPG that's free to play. And as far as the 20 or so hours I've played, that's not at all inaccurate. I have not felt any pressure to spend money, and the experience hasn't felt diluted because of it either. Still, I'm not sure if part of that stems from how it exceeded my terribly low expectations for a free-to-play anime RPG, or if it's genuinely because the game feels like something you'd normally have paid for. A lot of people are incredibly impressed with how fully featured Genshin is, in spite of the lack of an entrance fee. I do think it's slightly dishonest to act like Genshin is literally just a single-player action RPG with a free-to-play gacha system tacked on. Again, in many ways this is surprisingly accurate, but in spite of how incredibly fair the game seems to be toward players, it still relies on reward pacing and an emphasis on currency balance that isn't commonly found in single-player paid games, but is all over free-to-play titles. You have a ton of reward systems for completing different active and passive tasks, which shower you with randomized loot along the way and tries to get you to perceptually feel like you're progressing. Unlike Tales or Final Fantasy, Genshin is clearly supposed to be a part of your routine. You get a lot of basic weapons and equipment that are solely designed to enhance the equipment you're using. They're effectively just experience points in a fancier form. And on top of that, there are genuine consumables that literally do nothing but offer raw upgrading experience, which you're showered with for doing basically everything. Nothing in Genshin feels permanent. Everything is the means to another cavernous leveling system, which then has multiple stages which ask for ascension materials to continue, and none of this feels like it's designed with a final balance point or traditional single-player endgame in mind. It feels like other gacha game progression systems, and is definitely structured like your usual perpetual grind, particularly when you factor in the gacha mechanic. Now, Genshin doesn't seem to have your traditional free-to-play choke point, where resources will run dry without tons of grinding or handing over some cash. I've been afforded so much of nearly every material, resource, and consumable that I don't see them ever running out or being difficult to grind back up if I do abuse them and run low. That makes Genshin systems substantially different in practice from its free-to-play peers, but it doesn't feel like it has the structured, focused growth of a Kingdom Hearts, Final Fantasy VII Remake, or a Dark Souls. Your investment in characters and leveling goes as far as until you get bored of that character and want to start fresh with another. But unlike something like performance parts in The Crew 2, you can't easily drive a new character up to the level of all your others either. You have to invest in them from square one. Again, that's not particularly taxing, but there's no shortcut I've found at this point, and the game doesn't seem to have any designed into it. Genshin is also a game that wants you to explore, but largely only as a byproduct of questing and grinding. You don't run across people in the world that need things done. Quests are literally forced into your quest log at specific points in the story or each day when you log on. You then go talk to those people and see what they need, almost like you found it on a bulletin board or something. And that's on top of all the checklists, expeditions, and everything else it gives you to interface with. None of these activities thus far seem to offer unique rewards that force you to grind one thing over another. That affords players a lot of freedom to go at their own pace and do what they want to do. But again, that also means you're almost entirely just getting rewards that turn into experience for equipment and characters. I presume it was designed this way so players always have enough quests ready to reach the next adventurer rank needed to do the next story quest. Because the one way Genshin locks you out of content is by mandating that you reach a certain rank before you can continue the story. These grinds aren't short, often taking several hours, but you're also free to do one of a dozen different things to reach the next progression gate, which effectively just translates to doing whatever in this world you want to do until your rank is high enough, even if that literally just means running around and finding puzzles and secrets in the world. It doesn't have to be structured. This game is often compared to Breath of the Wild, primarily due to the emphasis on fighting bokoblin-style enemies everywhere, known as hilly churls, climbing and gliding systems that are both nearly identical to Breath of the Wild's, verdant fields that are also extremely similar to what you'd find in said Zelda title, and some elemental systems that feign the systemic freedom Breath of the Wild offers. Fire propagates a few feet, ice can freeze the surface of lakes and such, and if I recall, electricity can bounce between wet enemies. But this is all significantly more scripted than what Breath of the Wild does. There are no organic physics systems to speak of, no advanced effects created by weather or the materials of your equipment. That's not to say the elemental system in Genshin isn't an interesting and decently implemented idea. It just doesn't provide a sandbox of choices so much as a simple puzzle box of optimal strategies to find. Genshin's central monetary conceit is its gacha system for unlocking characters, which when simplified down to its most basic components is basically a loot box system. When adventuring, the player has the ability to switch between a party of 4 characters on the fly. These characters differ through their designs, voice work, abilities, weapons, and their core element. They're unfortunately not so different that you can build complex strategies just around their core mechanics, but they do at least provide variety and something to attach yourself to. Unlocking these characters, outside of the fair amount that are given away through the story, is done by spending rare consumables on gacha loot box rolls. Duplicates give you a special item that can further power up that character in unique ways. So far, it hasn't been too difficult for me to unlock characters along the way, and considering I despise the generic, nondescript, trope-obsessed designs of most of the characters, I care more about them for their mechanical differences, but I also haven't felt like I'm at some sort of disadvantage because I don't have a certain character. I could probably play the rest of the game as it is with the characters I have now, which is strange because most of the time these systems push rather hard to try and get you to feel like you need the things that would convince you to pay money. If this was developed by almost any other studio, we'd have seen Skylanders-style progression gates that require you to purchase something new. And this is why Genshin ultimately has me so confused. I could honestly see this being a $40 game that would find a sizable niche audience of weebs and action RPG fans. It's a game that is solid, but if you take away the free-to-play aspect, it's not particularly special. Performance on PS4 isn't terribly awesome, there are localization issues, tutorialization issues, and an overwhelmingly nightmarish UI/user experience bogging things down, particularly when you first start. The world as far as I've explored is almost nothing but grassy fields, which is tedious and bland at points. The combat can be kind of deep and rewarding if you're underleveled, but otherwise it's pretty brainless, faceless, and repetitive. The vast majority of enemies you run across are hilly churls too, at least as far as I've played, reminding me a bit of the story missions of a certain Witcher 3. Dungeons are really generic looking and don't offer a significantly different experience from normal exploration, other than that it's just more restrictive. And again, loot largely just amounts to throwaway items that you start to see as nothing more than extra experience for leveling. The storytelling is a big bowl of nothingness if you're just following the quests themselves and not talking to every NPC around the towns. The game is nothing awful, but it's not special either, and I firmly believe that most anyone who argues otherwise is simply smitten with the fact that it's a free-to-play game that doesn't abuse them. But I also don't necessarily want to discount that aspect of Genshin either. It is important that it's so respectful of players, and seems to genuinely care first and foremost about you having a good time. You're getting a pretty average B-grade action RPG for absolutely free. That's valuable. How valuable will depend on the individual though. I ultimately don't think I'll remember a single thing about this game in a couple of years, and that's kinda sad, because it would have been cool if I'd have fallen in love with something so kind to its players. But I don't know how much more I'd care to play. If anything, it makes me feel a bit guilty for more or less getting a free meal at the expense of the developers. But it is what it is, I suppose. I'll be interested to see what they do in the future though, because there are a few minor nuggets of originality hidden within Genshin Impact. and if they keep up the respectful monetization model, I'll be incredibly impressed. Only time will tell. As a short aside, according to my analytics, the vast majority of you aren't subscribed to the LibraScope channel. If this video was enjoyable and is the type of thing you want to see more of, maybe think about subbing so you can see more from me in the future. No pressure, of course. Anyway, what do you guys think? Have you played Genshin Impact? How much have you enjoyed it so far? Have you hit any bottlenecks in progression that I didn't mention or didn't get to? And how valuable do you personally find the fact that the game is free to play? Sound off in the comments below, and I'll see you next time.